Hello, welcome back once again for session 17, which is actually going to be the last of these we're doing. In fact, I was just talking to Michael before we started and we're saying that, you know, unless we head into a second wave and a second lockdown, in which case I'm going to be back here in a month going, and welcome to session 18. But that's not the plan. Now, this week the wind is really getting up round here, so I'm not going to stand like this at an angle outside. So instead I've come in so you get to see another bit of my wonderful house. This is my kitchen, which, as you can see, like the rest of my house, is decorated with the fact that I bought it 4 years ago and have done nothing since then because I've been busy doing 100 other things. But anyway, this is my kitchen, this is where we're going to be today, and this is going to be our last session together. Going over these kind of things, really because I've run out of material that I don't need a second person here to help teach. So that's where we are, that's what we're doing. Thanks for joining me. It's lovely to have some people here with me to kind of see me through this final session. And we shall start as we've started every other week by falling in. So attention and fall in. Okay, so what I want to do this week is kind of two things. Normally I kind of try and do three with kind of two parts and a ramble in the middle, but this week I'm really only going to do two. We're going to start off and we're going to have a look at straight razor as a weapon. I'm not going to talk too much about it now, but that's what we're going to start off looking at. And then after that I want to take some time to go through what's involved in setting up a study group or a class or a school of your own. If you are interested in what you've seen here but you can't train locally, if there are other things going on and you want to train with other people and learn some of these kind of weird martial arts stuff that I've been doing, how you can go about doing that. So I want to spend some time on that just to finish off, just so that really I'm not leaving you at a cold cliff edge. I'm going, here's the end of what I'm going to teach you at the minute, but beyond that it's kind of over to you guys, and then it's up to you what you choose to do from that point. So, as I always say, you know, everything we're doing here, you know your body better than I do, so work at a level that's safe for you. So you know your own body, don't push yourself harder. Now, when I say that, straight razor is not a physically demanding weapon. What it is, however, is a very, it's not even that dangerous, but what it is, it's a very traumatic weapon, okay? It causes a lot of bleeding damage, a lot of muscle damage. It can be deadly. And it's just be aware of that if you're going to start studying straight razor. The other important thing is be very aware, don't use an actual straight razor. I shouldn't really have to say that. Don't use a live blade, okay? It is a really, really dumb idea, okay? So, if you get an old vintage one, I used to have one, I seem to have lost it at the minute, so I can't show you that one. Get it on a grinder, take the edge off it, make it butter knife blunt, and you're pretty much okay to use that. But what you can do, these are the kind of things I use. Now this actually has a section in here for fitting a blade, so I would actually put my razor blade in that bit, which means that although it has the shape of the razor blade, this is actually a blunt piece of metal in this case. So I can quite happily run that over my skin without opening anything up or doing any damage. You know, quite happy with that. I would not be doing that with a live blade. So just be aware, if you are going to have a play around, buy one of these that doesn't actually have a blade in it, okay? You can get them for about 2 or 3 quid, you know, and they're perfectly good for training with. But just be safe, okay? Also, even something like this is quite happily going to get you arrested, okay? This is not, and I repeat, not a self-defense tool, okay? There is no point you can claim you are carrying a razor blade around the streets, slice somebody up, and get away with it being self-defense, okay? That is premeditated, grievous bodily harm, okay? You're going to jail. Don't do it. This is not self-defense. This is a kind of more historical fencing interest thing, okay? In the same way, I'm not going to go and try and carve somebody up with a broadsword. I'm not going to go and try and do it with a razor blade, okay? So, with that said, let's have a look at what we're actually dealing with here. I'm going to stop using this one because the black is not the greatest visibility. I have another one that I think will be easier for people to see. Wooden handle, silver blade, bit easier for people to kind of follow and see what I'm doing. So, we've got the handle, normally kind of slight curved shape. It's actually got a slit right through the middle, which the blade quite happily sits into, okay? So when we're using that, obviously, we're going to be holding predominantly the handle. We've then got the blade, as I've said before. This one's got, again, the same mechanism as the other one for holding a razor blade in there, so at the minute it's completely blunt. There's this slight hook bit that sits out, because that's what you're going to use to open and close your safety razor. We're also going to use that as part of what we're doing. Okay, so it's important to understand the bits of the razor. So as we do with everything, we're going to start with how you hold it. Now, there are essentially 4 holds I am aware of, 4 different ways of holding the razor. I think 2 of them are very good. I think 2 of them, well, one of them I think is dangerous, and one of them I think isn't very useful. So I'm going to go through them all, so you can make your own mind up. The first of them is the one that I think is dangerous. I'm going to start with that one, so hopefully you entirely forget it by the time we get anywhere. And that one is I hold the razor blade in my hand, and I put my thumb along the back of the blade. So I curl my hand across here, and then my thumb on the back of the razor blade. And then I'm going to use that to slice through these directions here. Now, the problem I have with that one is, the idea is that any momentum, okay, you've got to be aware, if I have my hand covering here, and I don't have my thumb on the back, any pressure to this top bit folds the razor blade down and the sharp bit goes into my fingers. Okay? That is not helpful. So what I'm doing is relying on this hook sitting behind my thumb, so that when I push this forward, it's actually, I'm trying to see if you can see that, it's actually, if I go this side, digging into my thumb there so it can't move. Okay? The problem is it's very easy for that to slip to the side and through, and then it's collapsing in on my fingers. So I don't like this one. I understand the idea behind it, but to me it just feels a little bit dangerous. Okay? The one I would prefer to use is from there, is I would rather put my finger on one side of the actual top part, and my thumb on the other side. So I'm actually holding the blade with these 2 fingers. I'm then going to wrap the others around the handle for extra security. And now, rather than pressing against my thumb, because I've moved it up a bit more, that is pressing against the whole of my hand. So actually, there's no way that is moving forward and cutting my fingers. Okay? Now I have, admittedly, lost a couple of centimetres of range. Okay? But I'm not so worried, because straight razor is not a range game. Okay? So I'm going to take the shorter range, which gives me a more secure grip. And we're going to call this essentially the lockout grip, okay? Because I've opened it up into as I would be if I was shaving, and I'm locking it in that position. So the lockout position, that is the one that I would prefer to use. Pinching it with those 2 fingers, wrapping the rest around. And if you try that, you'll find you've got a really good control over it, and that top part is not moving anywhere near your fingers. So that's the first 2. One I think is dangerous. I quite like this one. There's then the other one that I really like, which is actually to take the razor blade, and if it was opening this way, we're going to extend it all the way through. I'm going to hold it then here and put my thumb on that metal bit. Okay? Now what I've done here is the sharp bit is now facing out away from my knuckles. Okay, and I'm going to use it this way. Now I can just punch as if it was a knuckle duster, just adding on that extra weight with the sharpness of the blade there, but realistically I'm going to slash with that and try and use that blade to actually open up skin rather than just punch into it. So that is the fold over grip that we're going to be using. Okay, and I find this one works quite well, because normally your guard is a little bit lower than your head, a little bit lower than your opponent's head, so those upwards cuts work really well. The other version that is used is also a fold over grip, but on the other side. okay? And I'm relying on the fact that this hits the bottom of my hand to stop it overextending. This is quite nice. I can get some big powerful hits with it, but most of them come in that cutting down direction. Now possibly just because I'm short, I prefer a rising up. Hammering down on people is very circumstantial. I'm only going to use it occasionally, you know, maybe when a block's up and then come down with a cut. So it's not one that I find particularly useful. Obviously, it's there. If you like it, feel free to experiment it. But the two that I'm going to use are the lockout and the fold over there. Those are the two we're going to be looking at with the techniques today. Okay, so that is how to hold your straight razor. And really, if you want to practice with a straight razor, all you can do is get one, move around with it, get comfortable. Okay, so let's start looking at some of the stuff that we can actually do. We need to be aware of the target areas, okay? If I slash somebody across the chest here, okay, if they're wearing a jacket, even a sturdy shirt, there's a chance I'm not going to get through. A razor blade is not a big cutting weapon, okay? I've got to make sure I hit exposed skin, and I've got to hit somewhere that I can do some damage. So, here is your list of target areas. If you're squeamish about blades, this is probably not the part for you. Okay, places we want to look at. The throat, okay? Anywhere on that kind of Adam's apple area, underneath into the top of my neck here, that is a prime target. That is going to bleed, and that's going to hurt. Other options are the sides of my neck, okay? I've got my carotid arteries in there. If you can cut one of those open, I am bleeding to death. Okay, so that is another obvious target. Okay, we have the face in general. If you can cut anywhere on my face, it's going to cause me a lot of trauma because I'm going to start bleeding, particularly if things like the Peaky Blinders would cut across the top above the eyes so that the blood goes down and impairs vision. But if you make somebody bleed, they start panicking, so that's what those shots are kind of for. Other target areas, and we've got the insides of the wrists, okay? Across here, yeah? Doesn't matter whether you're going diagonally or straight across. Inside of either wrist, again, is going to open up a lot of veins. You can get to arteries. Everything kind of bleeds. It causes panic, okay? Where else would I say? Yeah, there's the eyes as well. This is the one that freaks me out, I'll be honest. Everybody has something. But yeah, again, slashing across the eyes, anything that causes damage to the eyes, it doesn't take much for a razor blade either pushed in or slashed across to damage the eyeball, totally mess up your vision permanently. And other than that, the other target areas that are available, potentially depending again on what your opponent is wearing, can be the groin. Not particularly the groin. I tend to think about it actually where you're aiming for is rather than the fork of the groin is just inside the crease there, which essentially you're aiming to get the femoral artery. And again, much like the carotid, if you hit that artery, if you can get a slash across the inside of the groin there, somebody will bleed out in a few minutes, okay? It's a death sentence. Now that's not going to work if they're wearing a sturdy pair of jeans, but if they're in, I don't know, a pair of trackies or something, you might get away with it. So, those are your target areas, okay? And everywhere else, you're not really going to do a vast amount of damage. You might cut, you might cause pain, you might release blood, but you're not going to do damage. So we need to look at how we can use the razor blade effectively to hit those areas. So, the first one we're going to look at is from the lockout position. So again, we're curling it round and we're holding it out. Is what we call the whip cut. So from my kind of fighting stance, it's the same as every other stance we use. From here, and I don't mind whether you've got it front or back, all I'm doing is bringing it up and then whipping it around and across. Okay? Now normally that will be at eye level or at throat level, depending on how if they're aggressing at you kind of like this, you've got a chance to hit the throat. Otherwise you're going for the face or the eyes. So from here up and across. And it can be done very quickly. Okay? But it's that whipping action that really hits and drags the razor across. Okay? So you've got to be able to very quickly bring the hand up through the center line with the palm facing you and twist to the palm facing away and through very quickly. Okay? So that's the first one I'm going to look at. Now you can imagine, this can be carried very easily in my pocket. It's where I was carrying it to start with. So it doesn't take a lot for me to take that out from my pocket, open it up, and go into that slash. Okay? Very easy for me to do that whilst the fight is kind of gearing up across the eyes. From the forehand, just as easy, across the eyes, across the throat. Okay? So that is one of the best lockout positions you can do. It gives you that nice cut there. The other one that I really like for the lockout position is one that comes from Italy. This is potentially a killing move, but the idea of this was to take hostages. So I want to scare somebody into submitting rather than actually killing them. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a fencing move called a Volta. So anybody who studied fencing will be familiar with a Volta, where I'm going to stand on guard. When an attack comes in, I'm going to move my entire body offline by stepping with this side foot goes right the way across and my body moves out the way. But I keep my blade in line and let them run onto my blade whilst I'm safe. I'm going to form that same move. So as they punch, I'm going to grab their hand, I'm going to Volta and bring the blade out here. And what you'll find is, if I was throwing the punch, my hand gets grabbed, they've moved out of the way, and the blade ends up here, sitting right on my carotid artery. Catch. And from here I have a hostage situation. There is nothing they can do quicker than I can kill them. So from that point, they will come with me, and they become my hostage, and I can sell them back to the family. They lose face, I gain face, and some money. But it's quite a nice one, that quick grab out to the throat. Okay, it's one of the few ways of actually halting a fight without doing any real damage with the blade. So it's worth knowing about the Volta one. Everything else I want to look at really comes from that fold over position, because I think that's the one that I find I use most often, and there's a lot of nice tricks you can use at this point. I'm just going to double check, just make sure I didn't have anything else to talk about. Yeah, so one of the standard ones with this is, as I said, that straight punch, using it like a knuckle duster. I'm going to twist it so it just comes straight out, and the idea is I'm trying to hit that into the Adam's apple or the throat. Yeah, because if you think about it, when I'm fighting with this, I've still got my hands. I'm going to be boxing, fending off blows or whatever, waiting for that opportunity to get a nice cross in under the throat in here and get my damaging blow. So that's one of them. Where did I want to go after that? Right. Yeah, also from there, obviously, the other major ones that we're going to use, there's 3 other cuts that are worth knowing about. One of them is the kind of backhand cut. So from here, it's very much moving the blade in the same way as the lockout one we looked at earlier, but now I'm bringing the hand just across. So it just rises up and comes across, and that's going to cut. If I can get this from the right direction, they'd be there. That one's coming across this side of my neck. Okay? So I want to angle that slightly up and down so that it's actually cutting down that line there. And I can do the same very easily from the other side. So I've got those kind of 2 scoops into the middle that are cutting ones for the side of the neck. I've also got a rising kind of uppercut through the middle that's just going to ideally cut chin, up through the lips, through the nose. A lot of blood, a lot of pain, okay? Through the middle. So I've got cut through the side of the neck, cut for the face. Those are really your primary attacks. There are some other ones that are worth bearing in mind, and again, going back to Italy, because they were a culture that used these quite a lot, they would carry it in their pocket with the handle sitting out like that. So it doesn't draw lots of attention, there's just a bit of wood hanging out of my pocket. But it's really easy at that point for me just to lift that out and be armed, ready to fight. Okay? So what they would actually do is, in a crowded area, that would come out and then go across somebody's groin. So from the hip, a rising cut, as I said, aiming for that femoral artery. okay? Because it was a very embarrassing cut, you'd been hit in the groin and you died from it, okay? But it was a quick kind of cut up. So it is possible, if you were in a fight situation, if you were boxing up here, you could drop the hand and get that same kind of rising cut that can go either way, but it's just getting the blade down low enough to actually deliver that cut. There's also a very, I'm going to say nice, but that's maybe not the right word. There's a really horrible tactic again, where if a punch is coming out, if I block that punch as I would do normally, if you think about it, if I throw a punch and it gets blocked, the inside of my wrist becomes completely open. So when that punch comes in, I block and slice the razor blade up the inside of the exposed wrist. So I punch out, it gets blocked, and then the razor blade comes straight through that area there. So I block, slice up, block, slice up, and then I'm probably going to come down with a cut here, cut there, you know. So block the punch, slice the wrist, and then I'm looking for a cut in for the face, and then maybe a riding uppercut. But again, I'm looking very much at the cut 1, cut 2, cut 3. They're all sliding motions just to cut at those exposed areas. So that one's the wrist, the neck, and then the face. Right, where was I? I think I've covered most of this. So that's really most of your attacks that are covered with a straight razor. The other thing that's worth bearing in mind is even when the straight razor isn't open, okay, so it's in that closed position, there's still this kind of metal knobbly bit sticking out the end. And if I hold it at this end with my thumb over the top to stop it sliding, I've actually got quite a little jabby weapon. And I can quite happily box as I would do normally. I can use that to swipe in almost like a bit of a knuckle duster. But what's really nice with that is I can use these kind of ice pick hits for the groin, for the stomach, for the face on those 3 lines. So I can box quite happily, throw a punch, ram that metal point into the stomach, yeah, into the groin, obvious, into the face. Those are places where it's all going to cause quite a lot of damage. So it's worth bearing in mind that even when I'm not using it blade out, that little metal bit there still is a potentially quite a pain-inducing weapon. And if you want to start throwing things like, I think it's Kubatu-tan or whatever, there's these there's a whole load of stuff from Japanese martial arts about using these little sticks to do damage, and all of that you can do with a closed straight razor. So it's worth bearing in mind that even if you haven't had time to get it, you know, if it was in a pocket, even if you've only had time to get it out and get it to this position, you can do enough damage to buy you the second it takes to get into the lockout position and then come in with your attack. So there is your straight razor. Now, as I said, I wouldn't be using it just as my primary attack. I'm likely to hold it back and use this front hand as defense, you know, palm things away, block up, make sure I'm not getting hit. I'm still going to be using my jabs and all the rest of it, but what I'm looking for is block, slice the wrist. Block, take the eyes. Yeah? Palm across, strike at the neck, back again. So I'm looking for my opportunities, okay? If I'm using the overhand grip, it's exactly the same. I'm waiting for the opportunity to cut, slice the wrist. Block, slice at the neck. Yeah? So I'm using it very much in the same way as we did with things like the kosh, and to a slight lesser extent the baton, where I'm using it in reserve and waiting for when it can do the most damage. Okay? It's not, until you've delivered the first cut, it's not that intimidating a weapon. Once somebody's bleeding, it becomes intimidating. But until then, not so much. So, you'd have to think about how you use it. Also, bear in mind, just because I'm using a weapon doesn't mean that I don't also have elbows, knees, feet. I've got all of my usual attacks and things available to me. I can even get into grappling. If I get into grappling, okay, and I get a, you know, I don't know, half headlock or something, it becomes really easy to deliver those kind of cuts, yeah? Even things like if I'm looking at a punch and where I would normally go to something like an arm lock, there's nothing to stop that curving over and turning into a slice across the inside of the elbow. Again, you're not likely to do a vast amount of damage, but it's going to hurt, it's going to cause blood loss. And it will probably cause them that trauma, that moment of stopping whilst they think about what you're doing, and then you can do something nastier to them. So, that is, in a nutshell, straight razor. I I have seen it advocated as street self-defense, but I just want to reiterate again, I don't believe that at all. It is not a self-defense weapon. If you are carrying a blade on your person, you automatically have criminal intent. It is not a self-defense weapon. Okay? But I find it interesting. As I said, a lot of what I've been looking at comes from France and Italy in terms of street gang violence from different periods. Really from kind of the Renaissance onwards. So yeah, I find it quite an interesting little thing to have a look at, and just wanted to share that with you as something a bit random and silly to kind of close out our actual instructions with. So, straight razor, lockout position, your little whipping cuts. Yeah, we've got our Volta, nice little hostage taking one. And then when we've got the fold over, we're very much looking at those dragging, slicing cuts, and looking to inside of wrist, neck, groin, slice up through the face. Okay, there is straight razor. So hopefully you found that interesting. And I'm sure a few people will have found it quite horribly gross thinking about razor blades sliding through flesh. But swords, knives, blades, they're violent, and you kind of have to get used to that, I guess. But also, never train with a live weapon and you'll never slice yourself open. That's always a good plan. Right, what I said I wanted to do from here, and this is going to be probably more talking, even more talking than I normally do, is I wanted to go through how you go about studying further, okay? Because in about half an hour I'm going to stop talking, I'm going to press stop, little button on the side of my phone, and I'm not going to be appearing every week again to talk to you. Now, I'm going to sort all these videos out and get them online so they'll always be there for you to go back to, but I haven't really covered enough for you. Even if you dedicated years to just studying these videos, you'd still know practically nothing, okay? Because I'm only showing you what I can show you at the minute. I'm not demonstrating on another person. A lot of it will be clumsily explained without a partner to explain it better. So, if you want to study more, the standard thing that people do is start to set up a study group, okay? So I want to go through that process with you so that you know what you can do if you want to, okay? So if you want to get more involved, you want to do more of this kind of weird martial arts stuff, this is how you go about it. The first thing I would say is, if you want to set up a study group, is ask yourself, do I have to, okay? I'm not saying it's a bad idea, I'm saying it's a lot of effort. And there might well already be people training in your area. So that's question one. Search, see if there's a club in your area. If there is a club in your area, at least have the decency to go and try it out before you try and do your own thing, okay? Might not be to your taste, might not be the weapons you're interested in, but if nothing else, it is the best way to get a good grounding in swordsmanship or martial arts, is to go and train. Any swordsman school, any martial art will teach you the basics, okay? So go and learn that from somewhere that already exists, okay? Much easier to do it that way. So that's the first question. Do you need to? Maybe it wasn't what you thought you were going to like, but you really enjoy it and you can just join in a club that's already going, makes your life easier, makes their life better because they've got an extra member, okay? So that would be my first question. Do your research. If that isn't the case and you want to set up a group, there's two ways to do it. One is really, really easy, but carries a lot of risk to it. The second one is really, really difficult, but carries very little risk to it. So you're going to have to decide which one of these you want to do. So I'm going to go through the easy one first, okay? The easy one is what we think about when we normally talk about a study group, okay? So what you need to do is find a few other people that are interested. Yeah, if you can find, ideally if you can find one person, there's two of you, you can train together, you can spar. If you can get 3 to 5 people, you have a really nice little study group, okay? So find some friends that are interested in studying this with you, okay? You can study on your own for ages, you will not get any better. You need to be what we call pressure testing, okay? You can read a book, I'm going to talk about all this stuff, read a book, train the material, but unless you're actually trying to make it work against somebody else, you've learned a pretty dance move. Until you can make it work, you haven't actually learned the technique. So, find some other people that also want to learn. Okay? Once you've done that, you need to find somewhere to train. Okay? Now, if you happen to be living outside, that's great. If you live outside. If you live somewhere that has decent weather, outside is a perfectly good opportunity. Now, in the north of England and Scotland, where I've done most of my training, it's not nice to be outside most of the year round, so it's not an option. But if you happen to live somewhere nice and sunny most of the year round, practice outside. That's great. Loads of space. Okay? Other than that, I've trained in garages, I've trained in sheds, I've trained in barns, on farms, anywhere there's space, okay? But make sure, obviously, that you stick within the regulations of that place, okay? So if you're going to train in a local park, just ring the council and check they're okay with it, okay? You know, that kind of thing. Don't break into people's farms just so you can train in their barn. Speak to people, do it legitimately, but find a space, okay? So you've got some friends, you've got some space to train. The next thing you need to do is decide what it is you want to study. And I know a lot of people have a tendency to want to study everything. Because that's what I do. And I'm really guilty of this and I shouldn't be. People want to study everything. What is much better is if you have a focus and study one thing. Okay? I've picked up a lot of this stuff as I've gone along. But my focus, if you come back and ask me what my focus is Bartitsu. And that's my focus. Yeah? So, whilst I might do side sword, cutlass, what else we do? Saber, if I said that already, we do a whole loads of other stuff. Straight razor, all of the improvised weaponry. My main focus is Bartitsu, okay? So I always know what I'm coming back to. I know what material I'm looking for. I know what material I'm training, okay? Pick something. I don't care whether it's German longsword, whether it's, was it I-33 buckler and longsword. Pick your area of interest, okay? And then find a good training manual on it. You can learn off other people, that's great, but nothing beats going back and reading the manual and interpreting it yourself. Then seeing what people have put on YouTube and on the internet and seeing what their interpretation of it is. And asking those kind of questions. That's how you're going to learn what the manuscripts are telling you, and then when you try it out, you're going to find out which bits of that manuscript work for you. But get a manuscript. So get some friends, get some space, decide on what you're doing, get a decent manuscript. From there, get some decent equipment, okay? Now, when I say decent, I mean you need equipment to train, okay? There's no shame in starting with polypropylene weapons, starting with wooden wasters. That's not a problem, okay? Start with weapons that you can afford, that's great. But make sure the protective gear you've got, helmets, whatever, are suitable for the weapons that you're training with, okay? Don't just pick up broom handles and go at it, because what you're going to do is that's going to break and you're going to stab yourself and you're being dangerous. Get proper equipment and make sure it's suitable, okay? It's going to cost money, there's no way around that, but that's what you're going to have to do. Okay, so once you've done that, the next thing is just to start training, okay? So meet up, okay? What you need to do is go away and individually study your manuscript. You come back and you have a chat about what you've discovered, you try things out. So you maybe want to pick something and go, we're going to look at the guard positions next week. Everybody goes away, looks at the guard positions, comes in and goes, I've been looking at this and I've been thinking about this, and everybody shares their bit of interest. You then look through, try and mimic what the manuscript's telling you, step by step. If it's got drills in there, you work through them as they're written, and you practice until they become flawless, okay? And that is you learning the vocabulary of your chosen art. Once you've got that, you start pressure testing it. So what I'm going to do is, even if I'm looking at something as simple as, what I am training is a block and a punch, okay? So what I now need to do is I need you to come at me with a punch. Can I block it and return with a punch? What punches does that work for? What punches doesn't work that work for? I start testing it and seeing what works and what doesn't, okay? And if it works, I go, great. If it doesn't work, I go, why doesn't it work? Is it because I'm doing something wrong? Is it because that technique would work for somebody else, it just doesn't work for me? Is it the manuscript was misprinted and when he said from the right, he actually meant from the left? But start trying to make it work and understanding. And that back and forth pressure testing will actually start to teach you the art. Once you've got that kind of single move, you can move into what you would consider free play, sparring. You can actually just go at it against each other and try and make your techniques work. But make sure when you are sparring, you're trying to make techniques work. You're not trying to win. Okay, leave competitions till later, okay? First step, try and make stuff work. Try and learn combat awareness. Try and learn to control your adrenaline. Try and learn to spar safely. These are all important things, and they will teach you how to actually put into practice what you've learned. And then really all you can do after that is keep training, and you will get better. So there you go. That is how you set up a study group. Now, I said that was the easy way, okay? I know there's a lot of steps there, but really, it's just getting all the bits and getting on with it. Okay, that's actually really easy. The reason I'm saying there is risk involved is you are not insured when you do this. So if you accidentally stab somebody, if somebody's arm gets broken, there's no money to cover that. There's just a broken arm and you have to live with the consequences of that. That's not great. It's going to lose friendships. Things can go horribly wrong. Okay, so you're not covered by insurance and you need to be aware of that and train appropriately. Second one, you're not really collecting any kind of group funds. So you're each funding your own individual bits of kit. There's no money being set aside for bringing in outside instructors, buying new kit to make it easier to get other people into the group. There's nothing like that. There's no funding there. There's also no structure, which means if two people have opposing views, it can rip the whole thing apart because there isn't a clear set down way of how things are done, and if necessary, somebody who can pull rank to keep everything going. So there are those risks associated with it, but it is relatively easy to do. Okay? So that is one option for setting up a study group. The other option is much harder, but much safer in terms of it mitigates all of those risks. And that's really more setting up a class or a school or whatever you want to call it. Okay, we call it a forum because we've gone through this route. But it's setting up a proper club, okay? And this you have to come at from a very different angle. The first thing you need to do is decide what it is you want to study, because everything else you do from that point on, once you step foot on this journey, will be governed by that decision. Okay, pardon me. So, if you want to study, as it was with me, Bartitsu, but equally true if I want to study Sabre, if I want to study anything, I've got to decide what it is I want to study. And the reason I need to make that decision first is, step 2 is, I need to go out and get training and get a license to teach that thing. Okay? So I need a martial arts license. And you can get that from a karate school, you can get it from a jiu-jitsu school, you can get it through numerous groups if you go and train Sabre, whatever, but you need to get an instructor's qualification. Okay, there are courses that offer it online if you want to just spend the money and go spend a week and get a generic training qualification, but you need to do something that proves A, you know what you're talking about, and B, you can teach stuff, and 3, you can teach it safely. Okay, you need to do all these things and you will get a piece of paper that says you are qualified to teach martial arts. That is the biggest hurdle for anybody because it requires personal dedication, time, effort, money. That's where most people are going to fall down. But if you can make it through that, everything else falls into place. Even better, if you happen to be coming to this and you spent years as a kid and you're already a black belt in Taekwondo, then this might be a really easy step for you. But for most people, this is really difficult. But once you have your license, the great thing your license allows you to do is get insurance. Now, you can get insurance without it, but it's really tough and you're going to pay a lot of money for it. If you've got the qualification, there will be martial arts insurance companies out there. I pay my martial arts insurance every year so that I am covered when I'm teaching. I'm covered if one of my students is injured. I'm covered if I'm injured. I'm covered if I damage property around me. Now, nobody's ever asked to see my insurance or my license. Actually, that's a lie. Beamish did. It's a living history museum. asked to see those documents, but they're the only person who's ever asked to see them. But it's important that people know that I have them, okay? The main thing about having the insurance, other than the protection it gives you, is it will allow you to hire a venue. Most venues will not hire you a venue if you're not insured, especially if you're going to be waving swords around, because you can do damage with that to furniture, fixtures, fittings, whatever. They want to know that will be covered. So that allows you to actually hire a much larger range of things. So you can hire church halls, are really good, function rooms in pubs, working men's clubs, anywhere where there's, you know, kind of like a gymnasium, a dance hall, a school hall. All of these places might allow you to use their big empty hall for training in, okay? But you will need insurance to train in them. So, you've decided what you're doing, you've got your license, you've got your insurance, you've found your venue. Now you start finding your friends, okay? Now friends might be a looser term. You've put a lot of effort into this, you want to make it work. You might have to hit advertising and make new friends, bring them in and get them excited about what you're doing. But you need to get a group of people around you who are going to train with you. Once you've got your friends, you need to go out and you need to get your kit. This is also going to be more expensive than the other route because the chances are you're going to have to buy kit for you and a few other people to get them in the door and training. And then they will, once they're addicted, like we all end up know they will be, they will end up buying their own kit. But to start with, you'll probably have to provide that. So it's going to cost you more up front to get things going. But once you've got that, you've got people in, you know what you're doing, you can start to teach them. But you can also keep that study group mentality. It works a lot better for me than I think personally somebody standing up the front and saying they're teaching. The way I run things is, whilst I am the person who's obsessed enough to go away and read stuff and teach every week, any one of my students can come in and try and run through stuff and teach stuff. So it's much more a collective process than just one person teaching. But anyway, yes, where was I? Yes, so make sure you get people in and training, and then it's exactly the same, okay? Read your materials, practice your drills, make them work, pressure test them. Once you can pressure test something and it works, move on to sparring and start trying to actually learn to fight properly. Once you've done all of these things, hopefully you're going to get to a size where you actually need to register your club in some way. Now, I can only speak for the UK, I don't know the legislations around the whole world, but in the UK you register as a non-for-profit organisation. Okay, if you want to set it up as a limited company or a sole trader and actually make some money out of it, that's fine. But normally, most people will set it up as a non-for-profit organisation. You've got some paperwork you'll have to do, you'll have to submit a list of members, you'll have to set up a set of accounts. It's not complicated stuff, it's just admin. But if you do that, you're legally covered, nobody's going to chase you for money, because essentially you are actually taking income. Normally you're going to take income to cover the venue costs and maybe some equipment costs and, as I said, maybe hiring an occasional outside instructor and things, but technically that is a business. Register it as a non-for-profit, you don't get into trouble with the law from that side of things. Once you've done all of those things, you've actually got yourself a little club running, okay? There's no risk involved. You are covered by insurance if somebody gets hurt or something gets damaged. You've got funds there, so you are not then you constantly paying everything out. You're collecting money off people and then you're using that to actually fund things. A lot of people have difficulty charging money for kit, for training and stuff, because they feel they're just starting out. Don't be. They are paying to cover the venue. They're paying to take part, okay? They're not paying for your great wisdom. They're paying to help the club exist. And through that, they will get involved. But anyway, so you're covered from that risk, and you have the structure there. You're at the top. If people start arguing about things, you have the authority to kind of keep things straight and keep things moving along so the whole thing doesn't implode under arguments. So it's a much safer way of setting things up, but it does take a lot more effort, okay? So, with all of that said, what I wanted to do was give you some hints and tips. If you decide to go down this route, there's some really good and important stuff you should do. The first of them is find people that have done it already, find people that are studying what you're interested in, and just email them or phone them, message them, Facebook message them, however you prefer to communicate. the chances are they will be ecstatic. Let's not just say happy. They will be ecstatic to talk to you. Somebody is interested in the same specific thing I am, and they want to study it. They will then probably start pouring attention on you to try and help you. They will offer advice. You can go to them about training stuff. People will love to talk about their personal interests, okay? And if they already have a club, they'll be happy to help you out and tell you how to do things, okay? So just approach people, okay? And approach as many people studying what you're studying as you can. Get as much help as you can. Don't be ashamed. People love to talk to other people who are interested in their hobby. So make use of that. If you are starting out from absolute scratch, there's a couple of organisations that it's worth looking at. In fact, there's lots of organisations worth looking at that will help you get instructor training and can help you get insurance. And in fact, we'll probably have lists of classes that are available if you're looking for stuff. The two that I'm particularly aware of is the British Federation of Historical Swordsmanship, and I'm trying to remember what the other one's called off the top of my head because my memory is rubbish. The Academy of Historical Arts. They're both groups that will help you set up a study group. They provide instructor trainings. You can train with them until you become an instructor, and they have their own insurance, both group and instructor insurance through them. So get in touch with those kind of organisations. Find one that works for you. Although it may seem if you're doing something like Bartitz, you don't fit into a swordsman group, but if you are studying a historical treatise on martial arts, they will normally welcome you with open hands, even if you never touch a sword. Okay? But get in contact with them again, talk to them. They will love to hear from prospective new members and groups, okay? So make use of their resources. Other than that, get in touch with the wider community. There's a lot of really good events that go on. Not that I'm going to plug any in particular, like BartitsuCon, which will be happening, I think, somewhere end of October, beginning of November this year. It's an event I love going to. I get some great training out of it, but I also get to meet other people that are training in similar things to what I'm doing. And it's just great to talk to people. I spend a lot of time with forums. I spend a lot of time just Facebook messaging people that are interested in the same things I am. Get involved in that wider community. Get yourself to, I don't know, fight camp. Get yourself to, I'm trying to think what other events there are. There's one that does like archery and kind of weird fighting arts and stuff, as well as fairy crafts and all kinds of, if you're into that more Renaissance side of things. Just get out there, go to events, meet people. You will learn so much from them. Never stop learning from other people. Get out there, and eventually you'll find that you probably end up getting invited back as an instructor down the line, but that's never going to happen if you don't get out there and just start going to these events yourself. Right, so anybody you've seen on Facebook or on Facebook or internet or whatever who has a school going has at one point in their life known nothing about martial arts, known nothing about running a martial arts club, and is now doing it. Okay? We've all been through that journey in different forms, okay? But at some point we have all started as completely clueless as you might be now, okay? The only difference is that we have taken the time, energy, effort, and maybe a bit of luck to go through the steps to where we are now. I'm not in some way trying to say we're better. What I'm saying is there is literally nothing stopping you going through these steps and starting your own school, your own club, your own study group if you want to. Okay? We have all started from nothing and built something. If you want to do that, the only thing stopping you is you. Okay? And I will finally say, if anybody is interested and cannot find any other help, or even just wants to, get in contact with me. I will do everything I can to get new study groups up and running and researching and training anything. So get in touch with me. I'm always willing to help people. Okay? So that covers how you go about setting up your own club, which I'm sure I have put you off entirely, but it does mean that if you've got to the end of this and you've gone, you know what, I really want to study walking stick combat, and actually I've got a couple of mates who are quite interested, you kind of now have a blueprint to take that forward to actually form a study group and start hitting each other around the head with walking sticks. Okay? It's there. The knowledge is in your hands. It is up to you now. With that said, obviously this is kind of where I log out and say goodbye to everybody. It's been 17 weeks of lockdown that we've been through, and hopefully we've had a bit of fun. Hopefully I've been able to teach you some stuff. Hopefully I've shown you some interesting stuff that's just got you curious and reading. What I'm doing now is I'm going to stop and I'm going to take a month off. I say take a month off. I'm still going to be doing stuff. I'm going to be planning stuff. I'm going to be doing some advertising. I'm going to be pulling all of these down on Facebook and putting them on YouTube. So I'm still going to be very busy and active in Bartitsu, but I'm essentially going to take a month off. What happens after a month? Well, in September, in fact, I believe September the 1st is a Tuesday, we will be starting our face-to-face classes again back at Prohibition in Newcastle. So if you live in the kind of northeast, you're more than welcome to come and train with us. It would be lovely to see you there. From the 1st of September, every Tuesday from 7 till 9, we'll be in the upstairs room at Prohibition training again. Now for that first month at least, we're going to be doing a focus on swordsmanship. We're going to be very much working on the antagonistic side of things so that we can keep some measure of social distancing, yeah? We're not jumping straight into grappling. That's a little bit too close for comfort with COVID at the minute. So we're going to take a month off, August, have a holiday, have a relax, get yourself focused. Then September, we're going to hitting back in Newcastle for full-on training. So other things I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks is working out what it is we're going to be studying, okay? We've had a break, we're coming in to a fresh time. So this is time to ask the questions, what sword do we want to pick up and study? Now the chances are we will go back to sabre or side sword or something we've already studied. But if the entire group turn around to me and go, we want to do longsword or we want to do arming sword and buckler, then at least I have a couple of weeks to get a head start on them so we can start looking at that material. So that's stuff that I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks as well. But that's it. So, 1st of September, we will be back face-to-face training. And as I said, unless COVID causes another lockdown, this will be the end of these videos, at least for now. But hopefully you found today useful, okay? We've had a look at straight razor. Hopefully you've had a bit of fun, bit of a thought about quite a simple little weapon, easy to get hold of if you want to start training something a bit weird and wonderful. There is straight razor for you. And then I know it's been a lot of talking, but we've gone over how you can set up your own club. And all I can say is it's worth it. Get involved. It is an amazing body of work. It's lovely to be involved in. And there are so many amazing people working in martial arts. Okay, get on board, be one of us. We will welcome you with open arms and give you all the support we can. It is well worth doing. So, with that said, we come to the end of the class, and as I normally do, we will fall out. So, for the last time, attention, and fall out. It's been a privilege to put this material together and go through it with you each week. Thank you for bearing with me when I waffle on forever, and hopefully I will see you all again at some point, whether that's online, virtually, face-to-face at events, or hopefully most of you are just going to turn up, no matter how impractical it is, to my classes in a month's time, and we'll all get to know each other and learn to hurt each other in fun and interesting ways, and then have a pint. So it would be great to see as many of you there as we can. But until I do see you again, as I always say, stay safe, okay? Make sure you're training safe, make sure you're safe in everything else in your life as well, especially with COVID at the minute. And above all, it is a weird and horrible world out there, so be kind to each other. If we can't be nice to each other, we're not really going to get much further as a species. So stay safe, be kind, and keep practicing martial arts.